IVM.
The best financial decision I made recently was shifting all my credit card payments to Cred. Now, Cred is an exclusive club of highly trustworthy individuals who get rewarded for paying their bills on time. Plus, there's also the Cred Store, where you get a special curation of products from over 250 brands. And then there is Cred Pay, which allows you to redeem your credit coins while shopping on merchant platforms to unlock exclusive deals and discounts. Sounds great, right? Cred is a truly rewarding experience for something as boring as paying your credit card bills. So, just download Cred. Enough said. Folks, welcome to Paisa Vaisa presented by Cred, the most rewarding credit card bill payments app, and powered by Quarter. I'm your host Anupam Gupta, B50 on Twitter. I'm absolutely thrilled to have one of the largest mutual funds in India today, folks. ICICI Prudential Mutual Fund for the very first time on Paisa Vaisa. My guest Chintan Hariap, head of product development and strategy, and we are going to talk about their ongoing Nasdaq 100 International Fund new fund offer NFO right after this short Cred convenience break. Intel vPro provides the complete manageability tools to detect, repair, and protect your devices remotely so your workforce can keep doing what they do best wherever they're working from. Today, as most employees and IT teams no longer work under the same roof, fixing glitchy PCs and proactively managing the PC fleet has become increasingly difficult. The Intel vPro platform addresses these problems. With its Intel Active Management technology, that's Intel AMT, vPro enables IT to keep mission-critical resources running by establishing a secure connection between IT and an Intel vPro platform-based PC. In the event of a cyber attack, Intel AMT lets IT remotely manage and repair systems simultaneously, even if they are dispersed across multiple locations. PCs can be recovered quickly wherever they may be. Plus, the Intel Endpoint Management Assistant, that's Intel EMA, enables cloud-based manageability using simple web-based tools to connect with and remediate any Intel vPro platform-based PC. Both these tools provide better manageability and faster response time, resulting in substantial device management support cost savings and fewer help desk tickets. Visit www.intel.in/IT heroes to know more. Intel vPro, built for business. And folks, welcome back to this really special episode. In fact, we are dropping this in the middle of the week so that if you guys are interested in the NFO, you can actually have a look at it while the offer is still open. So here we go. Chintan, welcome to Paisa Paisa. Thank you so much for doing this for our listeners.
Thank you, Anupam, and a big hi to all your listeners. It's always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Talk to us. What is the Nasdaq 100 Index Fund? Let's just get an idea about the NFO. What does it track? When does the NFO start? When does the NFO close? And what happens after that? Quickly.
Yeah. So if of course we'll go into the details later, but the new fund offer is of the ICICI Prudential Nasdaq 100 Index Fund. It opened on 27th. It will close on 11th of October. And like you said, it's an index fund, so it will be tracking the Nasdaq 100 index. And the Nasdaq 100 index is one of the barometers which is used for technology sector in general, and it's actually not necessarily only technology, but we'll go into the details later. But this is a popular index, and I think from a investing perspective, already globally, more than 30 countries have products on the Nasdaq 100 and more than $200 billion of AUM. So in India as well, we have options for people to invest in Nasdaq 100. In our bouquet of overall investments, this was something which was missing. So we are adding this, and we are very happy to bring to the Indian audience the first index fund on Nasdaq 100.
Yeah, see, that's what I want to know more about. The first index fund on the Nasdaq 100. Chintan, see, we've got, I think, when I last looked, we've got one Nasdaq 100 ETF. I think we've got two Nasdaq 100 fund of funds. So just to clarify for our listeners, we've got three categories, right? First, we've got the index fund, then you've got the ETFs, and then you've got the fund of funds. Could you just explain to our listeners the difference between all three? Generic level, not particularly about your NFO, but just at a generic level, what is an index fund? What's an ETF? What's a fund of fund? It gets really confusing.
Sure. So I'll clear the confusion, and I'll try to make it simpler for the investing audience, because I truly believe mutual funds have a long way to go, and we are very happy to see more and more investors investing. And I think technology, and thanks to your podcast, I'm sure the knowledge level of the investors is also increasing. So I believe truly that from a mutual fund perspective, it is actually not that complicated. While Most people find it complicated because if you don't know something, it looks more complicated. I'll demystify it for everyone. So if we look at the mutual fund space, technically mutual funds are understood to be equity investing. So think mutual fund, think equity investing. But aisa nahi hota. It's actually not like that. Mutual funds have practically everything from a financial investment perspective that you may need for your savings requirements, liquidity requirements, long-term investing requirements, right? And within that, there are active funds and passive funds. Active funds are those funds which are actively managed by the fund manager. So you have an analyst team, fund management team, which are managing those funds actively. And then there are passive funds, which basically there is no fund manager, but they track a particular index, right? And within active funds, you would have heard about large cap, mid cap, small cap on the equity side. You would have heard about savings funds, etc. So there are equity funds, there are debt funds, there are hybrid funds within the active side. Within the passive side, there is this concept called as index fund, and there's a concept called as ETFs, which is what probably complicates people a lot, because what is an active fund, what is an index fund, what is an ETF? It's actually not that complicated. An index fund is basically a fund which has a particular underlying index which it is tracking. For example, in this instant case, the NASDAQ 100 index. So our fund, which will collect money from all of you unit holders, will invest in the NASDAQ 100 index in the proportion of the stocks held in the NASDAQ 100 index. So here there is no fund manager intervention. The fund manager is not deciding which stock, how much percentage. It's essentially we are going to be following a particular index, those 100 stocks in the proportion that they have in the index, we are going to be investing. This is a simple index fund where you invest and take out money much like any other active mutual fund, right? And then globally as well as in India, there is one more extension which is happening, that is the exchange traded funds. Now the exchange traded funds in the Indian context have a similar built like the index funds. You have index funds which are tracking index. The ETFs also track an index. The only difference is that the ETFs have units which are trading on the stock exchange. So much like how you buy and sell a stock, you have ETF units which are traded on the stock exchange. And that's the essential crux of what the difference is in terms of the NASDAQ offerings also. There is a NASDAQ offering which is like an ETF, which is traded on the exchange. There is a NASDAQ offering in the industry, which is basically a fund of funds. So a particular fund management house is investing into another international fund which is investing into the underlying constituents of NASDAQ 100. In our case, the index fund, which is the first index fund of NASDAQ 100 in India, whatever money we take from you, we are going to be investing directly in the underlying constituent companies of NASDAQ 100. And the constituent companies, as you are aware, are the well-known companies like Apple, Microsoft, Google, Alphabet, it's called Google essentially, Facebook. I mean, you name the company, Zoom. So these are companies which are part of our day-to-day lives. And so we are going to be taking the money and investing in those companies. That's the concept of index fund.
Okay, so there you go, folks. You've got an index fund, an ETF, and a fund of funds, as Chintan just explained, and how all three of them are different. Chintan, let's talk about the Nasdaq 100 now. I love this. The fact that we've got our first index fund based on the Nasdaq. Now, folks, for those of you who don't know, Nasdaq doesn't even have the word technology in it. It stands for National Association of Securities Dealers Automated Quotations. That's the Nasdaq, and you'd really wonder what's that got to do with technology. But anyway, so the Nasdaq 100, like the index name says, there are 100 stocks in the Nasdaq. So Chintan, talk to our listeners about why you should put in the Nasdaq 100, because a lot of people are saying that India is the hottest market in the world. But from your perspective, why does it make sense to invest in the Nasdaq 100?
Yeah, so there can be a podcast on India itself, why India is the hottest market and why we like India. And that's why we say a large allocation should be in India. It's probably reflecting also in the fact that last 1 year, India's returns have been head and shoulders above the rest of the world. In fact, if you look at the comparison with the MSCI Asia index, the MSCI Emerging Market Index rather, is at a discount to India, and the discount is highest that has been in many years. So India is doing well, thanks to all of us probably participating in India's growth in terms of as a consumer as well. But just to go back to NASDAQ, and since it's the topic of discussion, let me, if you allow me, Anupam, I'd like to take people to history and just give a background, because this is not something which gets discussed often. So when I was also doing work on launching this fund, I went into the deep dive, and there were certain snippets of assets which were quite interesting. So you mentioned NASDAQ and the full form of NASDAQ. It's essentially in 1971 an exchange which was launched in New York, that is in America. So NASDAQ Stock Exchange, much like New York Stock Exchange or the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, is a stock exchange in New York, based in New York. where close to 3,500 securities are traded. And it is also a listed company. NASDAQ Inc. is a listed company which is traded in US. So NASDAQ in 1971 was the launch of the particular stock exchange. In 1985, the world seems very different from 1985 to today, and I'll explain how. In 1985, NASDAQ launched two indices. One is the NASDAQ 100 Financials Index. The other one was a NASDAQ 100 Non-Financial Index. So typically, if you look at it, just one step back, if you look at US, we typically look at Dow Jones Industrial Average, which was an index which I think got launched somewhere in 1800 or end of 1800 levels. It is a very old index, 1897 if I remember correctly. The S&P 500 is another barometer which is considered to be a sign of what's happening in US. That was launched in 1957. And if I look at NASDAQ composite, so NASDAQ composite is made up of all three. That's since 1971 then they launched. But this particular index, NASDAQ 100, which we are speaking about, this is part of two indices which were launched together on 31st of January 1985, if I remember the date correctly. And these two indices, one was the NASDAQ 100 Financials, the other one was NASDAQ 100 Non-Financials. At that time, not surprisingly, financials were the large part. So this NASDAQ 100 Non-Financial Index was a poorer cousin of the NASDAQ 100 financial index being the larger part of the markets then. And so that's where this NASDAQ 100 Non-Financial Index, as we know today, is what we are discussing right now, because technology as part of the overall mix has grown so much that this NASDAQ 100 index fund, which is based on non-financial. So NASDAQ 100 does not have any financial stocks. It is based off the top 100 names listed in NASDAQ, which are non-financials. And hence, if you look at the composition of NASDAQ 100 today, it is 44% in technology, 22% in communication services. And then there are obviously companies like Starbucks or PepsiCo as well, which are more consumer-facing food and beverage companies. So these are top 100 companies on the NASDAQ stock exchange, which are non-financials. There is no committee to decide which stock should be chosen or which stock goes out. On the last Friday of every December, basically the rebalancing happens. The top 100 non-financial companies become part of NASDAQ 100. That's as simple as that. That's a brief history of NASDAQ for.
Amazing. So it's not that somebody woke up one fine day and said that we'll only have tech companies in this. It's just that technology became so big in size that when you talk about non-financial, technology is the biggest one, right?
That's right.
Okay. Chintan, thanks for that overview. When it comes to international investing, there are two indices which are huge. Okay, NASDAQ 100 is one, and then of course there's a big one which is S&P 500. Gets a little bit confusing. So you told us about how the NASDAQ 100 is non-financial and therefore heavy on technology. If you compare the NASDAQ 100 and the S&P 500 for someone sitting here in India, what do you think they should keep in mind while looking at both as options?
Yeah, sure. So S&P 500 is made up of the top 500 names virtually in US. So there would be certain exceptions because S&P 500 is so any stock which has to come into S&P 500 has to come through the filters, etc., ISO norms which are there, and it's actually the S&P, which is Standard and Poor's Index Committee, which will decide which stock comes or doesn't come based on liquidity factors or whether they fit into S&P 500. But in general, these are the top 500 names, including banking, right? Including banking. So S&P 500 and NASDAQ, as things stand right now, will have an overlap. There may be a 50 to 60% overlap because most of the companies, like in India, you have the top heavy names, right? So if you take Nifty 50 and you take, let's say, any other company which does not have financials, there will be an overlap. Similarly, S&P 500 and NASDAQ also have overlap. I think the overlap is about 57, 58%. But what is different is that S&P 500 has the 500 names, top 500 names. So it will have certain mid-cap names, certain small-cap names as well within the S&P 500. And from an investor perspective, S&P 500 will give you a true representation of US and across all sectors, while NASDAQ is giving a representation of non-financial. So that's the major difference, I would say. Otherwise, practically both give you an exposure into global leading companies. Just that the last 10 to 12 years, if you see in terms of earnings growth, in terms of sales growth or revenue growth, the NASDAQ 100 companies have outperformed. It's not surprising, right? Because the likes of Apple, Microsoft, Zoom, especially post the pandemic, that has even become a faster space that is seeing growth. So anything to do with technology and the spend has increased, and many of these companies have got that advantage. So versus an S&P 500, in the last 10 years, the earnings growth of NASDAQ has been better, and that is also reflected in the performance of Nasdaq being better. But we cannot naturally bet on them that it is always going to be like this, because there may be a time where banking does better and Nasdaq does not have banking. So Nasdaq is a theme which is a good theme for the long run. S&P 500 has its own space. So if you want to play pure US, I would say S&P 500 is your go-to place. If you want to play the technology space or the global integration space, then definitely Nasdaq 100 is also something which you can look at. I would say both have their space in an investor's portfolio. And today, obviously, there's an overlap of almost 58, 59%. But Nasdaq is a more concentrated theme into technology communication services. And hence, the growth that is there in the world today is being captured more by Nasdaq.
Right. So before we end this segment, Chintan, could you just help our listeners with returns, right? Because the Nasdaq 100 is a much larger index. I believe the market cap is what, some $19 trillion?
Yes. So
Yeah.
currently, as we speak, the Nasdaq is at $19 trillion. Yes.
And we here in India, I think
Three and a half.
so the Nifty, I believe, is probably at about 2 trillion maybe, and the broader Nifty 100 is at, I guess, about 2.4 trillion US dollars. So when we look upon this as from a return perspective, the whole theme is of correlation, of having a diversification into an asset that does not have that high a correlation with India, right? So can we just talk about that for a little while?
Sure. So if you look at the last 15, 16 years, the Nasdaq, let's say earnings growth has been 20%, right? And they have had patches of ups and downs, but in general, it's been very steady because technology-related companies have seen a growth. That would not be true for India, where there are many sectors: metals, oil, energy, current account deficit. So macro and micro will impact India. So if you look at investing, if you want to diversify geographically, you would probably get the benefit of rupee depreciation in your international investing. I'm sure many of our listeners are looking at their children going abroad and studying, or maybe just a good holiday outside once things open up, and hopefully we can travel outside much more comfortably. So either of these require, some amount of diversification, and if we can have an international investing, why not? So many investors are looking at international investing, and the way we see it is that whenever such opportunities do provide, investors are looking at diversification geographically. So that's why I think the Nasdaq 100 fits in from an investor perspective for diversification requirements, and also benefiting from if there is any rupee depreciation. It's all part of your asset allocation. I think we should definitely do a podcast on asset allocation at some point of time whenever you schedule. I know your schedule is so busy that I may get a chance only in February, March next year. Hopefully in this financial year I do get a chance, Anupam. But we should do one on asset allocation for sure. It will be our great pleasure to take that to your listeners. But yes, as part of your asset allocation, Nasdaq 100 is something which can be there and should be looked at for investors.
My schedule is completely open for the next 3 months because I've recorded for the next 3 months. But Chintan, please, come back to us in Jan. I would love to talk about asset allocation. It's such an important topic, and you've been tracking this sector. You've been in this job. You've been in this product, mutual funds, for almost 2 decades now, Chintan. This product literally did not exist even 5 years ago. Forget 20 years ago. I mean, if you wanted to have an exposure to international investing as part of your portfolio, to reduce the volatility of the Sensex, see, it gives you, I think the long-term returns are, I think 15% over whatever, a 40-year period. It's got a 30% volatility here. You've got these massive drawdowns that come in. I'm not saying that the Nasdaq also does not have drawdowns, but I think that just from volatility and protecting your portfolio, that diversification theme plays really well, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And that's why the core investment that we ask our investors to do and have that as the first core is the dynamic asset allocation category, which in fact benefits from the market volatility and moves your equity level based on valuation. That again will be another podcast, I'm sure, at some point of time, because we truly believe that the dynamic asset allocation category is the first step to any investor's portfolio, and then you build on it. Today we are talking about Nasdaq. That's geographical diversification. You first move out of the mindset that I will only be in fixed income. You move out to, okay, I want to invest in equities. Within equities, of course, first it is standard large cap oriented equities, then you go to thematic equities, then you move to, of course, geographical diversification. So I mean, it's like layer after layer after layer, and then you have a nice beautiful, so it's like having a beautiful thali with many options. First it's basically dal roti, and then you build on it and have more exotics around it. So I would say for your balance, for your better correlation and diversification, you need everything, including debt mutual funds, which are not spoken about, And someday, hopefully, we do discuss that also on your platform. So I think I've booked about 7 slots already for you. Thank you.
I wouldn't mind doing 10 or 12. I mean, the FlexiCap got a very good response, right? The FlexiCap NFO that had come out recently.
Yes.
Yeah,
Flexi, it did.
did really well, and that itself is another theme to talk about, right? Because between large cap, mid cap, small cap, having something that has the flexibility to go across the spectrum is actually good for your portfolio. And then, of course, BAF and DAF, I think I see the ads very often, and they're really, they're quite catchy. So anyway, folks, we'll come back to the Nasdaq 100 right after this small break. We'll talk about the product, the details, stuff like tracking error, stuff like cost, and a lot more. My guest, Chintan Haria, Head of Product Development and Strategy at ICICI Pru Mutual Fund. That's ICICI Prudential Mutual Fund. But before that, let's take a short credit convenience break and we'll be right back on the other side.
$100. That's all it takes to begin your journey with Bitcoin and Ethereum. No, really. With CoinSwitch, you can start investing in over 100 cryptocurrencies with just 100 rupees. On top of that, there are zero charges for deposits and withdrawals, so you can trade, buy, sell, however and whenever you want. All of this, plus their extremely intuitive interface, makes CoinSwitch the perfect app for beginners in the crypto space. But don't take my word for it. Just download CoinSwitch for free and try it out for yourself. If you'd like more information on cryptocurrencies, tune into A Show About Crypto with me, Rohan Joshi, my new adventure on IVM Podcasts. CoinSwitch, kuch to badlega.
And now, folks, we have a listener's question on company analysis.
Hello, Anupam. Where can I get earning reports, stuff like the result table, investor presentation, etc. for companies I track?
Well, I'll tell you what. Check out the Quarter app. Okay, the app has a press release from the company. The press release that the company declares each and every quarter, which contains the earnings table and the investor presentation and basically everything that the company declares with its quarterly results, which is mandatory by the exchanges. And you can check all of this data. It's in easy downloadable form on the Quarter app, right? So let's say that you're tracking a TCS or a Reliance and you want the latest earnings report. The company declared its earnings yesterday and you want to check out the table and anything else. Well, the Quarter app has all this. It has everything that the company releases and declares to the exchange each and every quarter. And the app is called Quarter. So that's a Quarter app. QUARTR, right? That's a Quarter app. And welcome back. To this really special episode of Paisa Vaisa. My guest, Chintan Haria, Head of Product Development and Strategy at ICICI Prudential Mutual Fund. Chintan, let's get into details of how the Nasdaq 100 Index Fund works, right? Because here we are sitting 9 o'clock to 3:30. That's how our markets operate. I believe the US, I think, opens at 6:30, depending on whether you've got daylight saving times or not, and then goes till, I think, 2:30 in the night out here. How does that work for me? How will NAVs work here?
Yeah, so much like any other international fund, since this is also an international fund, the trading will have to happen in the evening or in the late night, as you say. So we'll have the entire apparatus ready. We already have a ICICI Prudential US Blue Chip Fund, which is an actively managed fund, and that has been there since 9 years, like I said. So we have the understanding of how one should be investing outside. There are elements like currency exchange, investing outside through the exchanges in US. All of this is obviously something which we've learned over the last many years. So for us, it should not be a challenge to replicate that in the Nasdaq 100 or ICICI Prudential Nasdaq 100 Index Fund. And the orders would be given to the brokers much in the normal case of business, and the brokers will help us to execute it in the night in the US. And the NAVs. So in India, typically the NAVs come in the night at 8 o'clock for the India dedicated funds. Here, the NAVs come next day either at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock in the morning, because once the markets close there, then the settlement happens in India, and we'll be able to come out with the closing prices of the Nasdaq 100 and come out with an NAV. So that's the only change, I would say, that normally any international fund will have an NAV which will not come on the same day; it will come on the next day, and that's how the cycle works.
So that means that, like, today is a Monday. If I choose, and it's like 3:30 roughly now in India time. So if I choose to put in an order today at 3:30, I will get today's NAV when the Nasdaq opens, or will I get Friday's NAV?
So you'll not get Friday's NAV. If you invest today, which is before the 3 o'clock cutoff time, I think the cutoff time is 3 o'clock. So before 3 o'clock, if your money gets transferred here, and now I think it's on realization basis. So the money comes in before 3 o'clock. The fund manager will deploy that money tonight, and then tomorrow morning the NAV based on tonight's closing prices in US will get reflected in your NAV. So you will get your NAV based on the closing prices of today in US.
Okay, folks, just keep that in mind. Okay, we've shifted now to realization of your money. That's a important point to note out there. Okay, Chintan, tracking error. Just first help our listeners understand what exactly is tracking error, right? Because in index funds, that is a critical part of getting the price that you see on the screen, as in the Nasdaq 100 index, and the NAV that you're paying. So if you could just help our listeners understand A, what is tracking error, and B, how will it work for the Nasdaq 100 index fund?
Sure. So tracking error, Anupam, is essentially a concept. It explains how much is our fund deviating from the underlying benchmark when it comes to its performance. It's not an absolute measure. For example, if the underlying fund has moved, has given a 10% return, while the index has given a 10.25% return, the tracking error is not just the difference between 10.25 to 10. It's basically seen every day. Suppose the market has moved, or let's say Nasdaq 100 has moved 1% today, and we have moved 0.98, right? Then next day Nasdaq has moved again 1%, but we moved 1.02. You may ask, why is this movement different if you are tracking the underlying index exactly the same? And that's where investors should remember that exactly the same is an endeavor, but there are concepts, or there are timeline differences, there are rebalancing requirements, there may be dividends which have gone X but not received. There may be a certain cash which we will need to keep in the particular portfolio to manage the day-to-day liquidity. There will be an expense ratio which will also obviously impact your returns versus the benchmark. So the practicality of running the fund on a day-to-day basis means that our performance will be slightly different from the benchmark. Normally it is within the range. If you look at any of our domestic index funds or ETFs, the tracking error is way below 20-30 basis points. So less than 20 basis points means if effectively it is tracking the index very well. But if you look at international funds, there is also a concept of exchange of currency, right? So there is a currency exchange cost that needs to be borne. So there is a currency exchange. Then there is a timing effect also, right? Instead of the exact day end price, if you do it in the middle of the day, there is a timing effect. So most of the international funds, which are, let's say, a benchmark oriented, or are index funds or FOFs or ETFs, will have these challenges, and hence you will find that for international funds, this tracking error is slightly more than the domestic funds. It is a nature of how the international markets are working because of time zone differences and currency exchange differences. But from you as an investor, it is still the most cost efficient way of replicating a particular index, because obviously as an institution we can potentially have better rates on the exchange, or we can have a better execution efficiency. So I would say that tracking error, while it is important barometer, don't hold yourself back from thinking too much about tracking error and not invest outside, because that's not a that would probably do disservice to your overall allocation and wealth creation.
Yeah. Related concept, Chintan, the gap between NAV and the traded price. I don't know how, whether this is more to do with ETF or whether this has more to do with index fund, but could you just help our listeners understand this?
Sure. So we also have a very large ETF business, and we basically have a very wide bouquet there as well. So in fact, I got the eighth topic of discussion with you. That is the entire ETF bouquet that we have, and passive. I would say passive funds among the domestic side. We have it all across sectors, across themes, and we are launching
also they track some indices which people probably have not even heard of, right? The low volatility, and stuff like that. Yeah, you're right. I would love to have you back on the show for that.
It's been more than 5 years since we launched. In fact, 2016 July is when we launched the ICICI Prudential Low Vol 30 ETF. Took its time for people to understand, but now pretty much people are understanding it and gaining it. So that smart beta and the concept itself is a good topic of discussion for all the listeners. But apart from the smart beta, the IT, information technology ETF, the private banking ETF, the FMCG ETF. So the idea is to provide, like I said, a one-stop solution for all investors' requirements, and obviously manage it efficiently for the investor. There, obviously, the concept which you ask, right, that there's a traded price, there is an NAV, Why is there a difference between traded price and NAV at times? This is specific to ETFs. So an index fund, you will not need to worry about it, because in an index fund, there is no concept of trading. You basically invest your money before the cutoff time and you'll get the day and NAV. So there is no complication that. And same likewise, it works for redemption of an index fund. But in an ETF, the underlying fund has an NAV. And because the units are traded on the exchange, there is an exchange traded price. So there will be an exchange traded price. Let's say the NAV is 20 rupees for a particular ETF. The NAV, the underlying fund NAV would be 20, and it is traded on the exchange. The exchange traded price is determined by buyers and sellers. So there can be sometimes a premium, sometimes a discount. Normally, it is around the NAV. There is not a very wide difference. If it's too illiquid an index, if the index is very small or the ETF is tracking an index which is not very popular, you will find that the difference is higher. But that's where the authorized participants come in. So each AMC appoints authorized participants to ensure that whatever is the NAV, not just the closing NAV, but there is a live market NAV, right? So when the prices move up and down, there is a live NAV which keeps happening, or there is the live prices tend to change the NAV up and down. And if the ETF is very different from the live NAV, you as an investor can benefit or lose, and that is not the objective. You want to manage it efficiently for you as well. So there's an authorized participant who will try to keep the let's say difference between NAV and ETF narrow. So if the NAV is 20 and the ETF is trading at 21, and if you buy it at 21 instead of 20, you are the loser. And if you get it at 19, you are the winner. So the idea is to keep it as close to the NAV. That's what the authorized participants work. In ETF is in a nation stage in India. We truly believe that as more investors come in and more investors start trading in, it will get narrower. It used to happen in the stock exchanges also. The illiquid stocks had bid-ask spreads, which used to be wide, and there was arbitrage opportunities. In ETFs, the similar thing is happening right now, wherein because they are not most popular, they have a bid-ask spread, but we try to narrow it as much as possible through our authorized participants.
To that extent, of course, that gap between NAV and trade price does not arise at all for index funds at all, right? Because they're index funds, we are not going to sit and trade them day in day out. And I guess that's one unique aspect about the index fund versus the ETF. Okay, Chintan, dividends, bonus splits. US has a very active corporate actions market. I mean, Apple has, for example, bought back a lot of their shares in the last 5-10 years. How does this work in general for an index fund? And therefore, how will that work for your Nasdaq 100 index fund?
So generally, if you see any corporate action, passive funds generally do not participate actively in the corporate action unless they are forced to. For example, if there is a rights issue, then you may need to do something. But if there is a buyback, passive funds generally do not participate. The buyback ensures that the number of stocks of that particular company go down, and effectively their market price goes up, the benefit of which comes to the investor. So you don't need to do anything there as well. As far as dividends are concerned, the dividends are obviously received by our fund, and there would be a concept of, let's say, slight withholding tax, which is there on the dividends. But again, from an investor perspective, since these are growth-oriented companies, it does not impact too much because the dividend yields are itself lesser, and we are likely to basically focus more on getting the capital gain part of it. And as far as capital gains are concerned, capital gains in US and equities are not taxed, so that's not a stress as far as investors are concerned. So from an investor perspective, it is a tax-efficient vehicle in that sense, wherein you're not losing out too much, and more importantly, you're getting access. Sitting in India, your money is invested in India. So this does not form part of the LRS requirements also. So that's also one more advantage which the investor would have.
And the LRS is for $250,000 per year, right?
That's right. Per individual, yes.
But that won't apply now for the Nasdaq 100 index fund. Right? I'm investing in rupees out here, so I'm not under the LRS umbrella, right?
No, correct. So you are investing locally, and that it's not forming part of your calculation of $250,000.
Sure. Just winding down the episode now, Chintan, cost of the fund, right? And maybe if you can just help us with some perspective on how the index fund cost compares to an ETF and to a fund of funds. That might just help our listeners more.
Yeah, so the costs typically are regulated by the regulator, so you cannot charge more than 1% in general for ETFs, FOFs, which are underlying base of ETFs. So the regulator has kept a cap. Within that cap, most of the funds will be competitive. It's a competitive world, so everyone would try to be around the same area, wherein you get the benefit of basically running the fund. There are costs which are there for running the fund, like index licensing, etc. You take those into account. Then there are obviously costs of managing the fund, and then over and above that, you basically keep something for yourself. So that's how generally most would price it. If you look at the comparison as such between the ETFs or the index funds, there again there will not be much to choose. It's essentially how comfortable you are. Because if you're investing in an ETF, of course there are costs like brokerage, etc., which you're investing in an ETF, which again is not a problem, because if you are timing it, if you're an active trader, and if the markets are down today and you get that at a lower price, you get the advantage of that. And on the other hand, index fund, you don't have to worry about brokerage and all. You just invest there. There is no entry load. There is no brokerage involved. And in this particular fund, there is no exit load as well. So there are no over and above costs other than what is there as far as the underlying fund is concerned. So if you look at a 50 basis points expense ratio or 40 basis points expense ratio, as the case may be, they're well within the 1% limit. And again, don't look at expense ratios as a decision-making tree. They are important, but they are unlikely to be different for the funds which are similar, because ultimately competition ensures that funds are similar priced in general. But it's more about what fits your overall investment requirements and what is more convenient for you to invest. So index fund is very convenient for SIP, etc. You can choose that as well. Thank you.
So what would be the cost? I mean, do you have any indicative range to offer to our listeners now for the Nasdaq 100 index fund?
Yeah, so if you look at the overall costs for the investors, it will be 50 basis points and 1% for the direct and the regular options respectively.
Very interesting. You said 100. So you said 50 basis points for
the direct option
and 100 for the regular.
And 100 for the regular option. That's
and
as
no
of now. That's as of now. That can keep changing up and down based on, and of course, investors do get intimations whenever the changes happen. But as of now, that's the likely range at which the fund will come.
Okay, and there is no entry and exit load at all.
There is no entry and exit loads in the fund.
Fantastic. Okay, so last question, Chintan, how does taxation work out here? Long-term capital, long-term capital gains, short-term capital gains for the Nasdaq 100 index fund.
Yeah, so if you look at, let's say, the capital gains for in Indian context, I'll simplify it even further as a generic rule. So any of your investments in an Indian fund wherein there is more than 65% in Indian domestic equity, you get the advantage of equity taxation, right? Apart from that, any other fund that you invest, be it a gold ETF, gold savings fund, international fund like the Nasdaq 100, or any of the debt funds, you have basically what is called the debt taxation, or the taxation wherein the holding period for long term is 3 years. And if you hold a particular, like for example, in Nasdaq 100, if you hold it for more than 3 years or 36 months, you get the advantage of long term capital gains with indexation. That is, you get the indexation benefit, and on the indexation benefit, so your cost gets increased by the index. RBI comes out with a cost inflation index, and whatever is the higher number as far as your cost increase is concerned after 3 years, you basically deduct the realization. If there is a capital gain, on that capital gain, you will pay 20% plus some surcharge, etc. So the idea is that you keep for more than 3 years, you get indexation benefit and you pay 20% on that. And if it is less than 3 years, in the case of Nasdaq 100 or in debt fund, it will be your marginal rate of tax. That is how it works for the debt part of it, or the debt taxation and international funds and gold. In equities, as you are aware, if it is more than 65% in domestic equity, your holding period is considered to be long term if it is more than 12 months. And if you have held a particular equity fund for more than 12 months, you will be paying tax of 10% with cess. And if you're holding less than 12 months, it is 15% with cess. So this is how the tax structure is. It is just essentially two parts to it. One is equity, one is debt and others, which includes international and gold and Nasdaq, etc.
Okay, Chintan. So we are almost done with the show. I just realized, there is one question here that I have to ask. The Nasdaq 100 has done so well in the last 10 years, right? Am I actually, I don't know, maybe catching something that's at its best, or outlook-wise, future-wise, where do you think the Nasdaq 100 is?
Yeah, sure. So this is a question which is an obvious question when something does well. In fact, our own theory suggests that if something does very well, you need to be cautious while investing, and hence, like I said, your overall asset allocation matters. Within your overall asset allocation, if there is scope for diversification geographically, you may look at the Nasdaq 100 along with the other options that you have. But more importantly, from the Nasdaq 100 and its construct itself, if you look at the underlying companies, many of these companies are capturing the global pie available of consumer spending, right, which is growing. So if it's Africa or in Asia or in India, the growing pie has been captured, and these are technology leaders, these are research and development leaders. The average spend by the Nasdaq 100 companies is $10 billion, close to 80,000 crore rupees.
Wow.
Very few Indian companies have turnovers which are larger than that. I'm talking about the average R&D spend that these companies are doing. And typically, if you're investing in R&D, it definitely helps you to get the benefit of that in terms of superior product quality, superior service quality. And we all know how once we start using many of these companies' products or services, we tend to get hooked to that because there is advancements which keep happening. They keep adding on to features, and it's more and more of our time share, mind share, and of course our wallet share. So if that's going to happen and R&D spends which they're doing, it will probably help their growth. That essentially ensures that these companies' pie of the global share will probably remain steady or grow. Now, of course, as part of the market risk, if the global equity market risk should go through a volatile time because of interest rates increasing, and again, that can be a different discussion topic and a podcast in its own right. But that will mean that these current companies will correct much like the rest of the world in terms of equities. And that time you should be able to add more. So get your asset allocation right, have certain portion in equity, have certain portion in debt or fixed income. And then when the market's correct, increase your equity allocation, be it in India or abroad, depending on the relative valuation. So I would say that's how we look at NASDAQ 100. It's not, we normally don't look at investments in absolute term. It's always relative and it's always part of asset allocation. And that's what we request all investors to do. Thank you.
My God, look at that, folks. I think you can't, that is such a nice summary of how you have to plan your investments, get your asset allocation right. That's really more important than anything else. And Chintan, you've given me, there are so many ideas to talk about in our conversation so far. But I wish you and ICICI Prudential all the very best for this new product launch. I hope that it gets a good response, and I hope to have you back soon on Paisa Paisa. Folks, that is a wrap on this episode of Paisa Paisa. My guest, Chintan Haria, Head of Product Development and Strategy at ICICI Prudential Mutual Fund. Chintan, thank you. Thank you really so much for doing this for our listeners.
Thank you. Thank you to all your listeners as well. I hope I was able to add value to you and your listeners. Thank you. Cheers.
I'm sure you did. And now, the great privilege tip of the week. Folks, index funds and ETFs sound similar, very different. Read up on what is different between an index fund and an ETF. ETF is a daily traded product. You'll probably call your broker or you will use an app where you see the price changing of the ETF throughout the day. Okay, that's based on prices that change every day. That's an ETF. Okay, and the costs are different. You pay brokerage out there. An index fund is based on NAV, net asset value. There's no brokerage there. You're dealing directly with the mutual fund. So please understand the difference between an index fund and an ETF. We've spoken about it at length on a lot of episodes of Paisa Paisa. And listen to those episodes. If you don't, just reach out to me on Twitter on B50. And thank you, listeners, for listening to this episode. If you're enjoying this show, please do share it with your friends, family, and people that you know. That would be really helpful for us. You can listen to this show and other interesting shows on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are IVM Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to reach out to me, I'm your host, Anupam Gupta, B50 on Twitter and B_50 on Instagram. Thank you so much for listening to Paisa Paisa, presented by Cred, the most rewarding credit card bill payments app, and powered by Quarter.
No material on the show should be considered as financial advice. The material on the show is for informational purposes only. Please consult a financial advisor before taking any investment decision.
Hi everybody, just wanted to ask everyone for a quick favor. We're running a brand survey right now and would really appreciate it if you could let us know what you think about the advertising on IVM. Go to ivmpodcast.com/survey and do let us know. As part of this, we'll be selecting 10 random participants and sending them some IVM swag, so do fill out those surveys. Hey everybody, it's been a great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast, Ashwin and DJ dive into all the major scoops from the first week of the IPL's 2021 second leg. They talk about the Indian women's team beating Australia in the third ODI, breaking their winning streak of 26. On KBCD, Farhad and Sunetra are in conversation with mental health practitioner Unnati Bharadwaj. They discuss loopholes in the mental health industry, especially for queer individuals, and how to come out safely to friends and family. On All Things Policy, Priyal Dalmeda and Ruturaj Govekar discuss the rationale behind booster shots. On Hans Vani, listen to an intriguing story called Aankhein about how our eyes see everything and yet sometimes fail to grasp reality. And on the Life Manifesto, Zarina talks about the implications of burnout. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any other show for that matter, please do tell a friend. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors on the network this week, Cred, Bank of Baroda, Quarter, CoinSwitch, Kuber, and Inter. We appreciate the support.
पेश खिदमत है आपकी शान में हमारे अंजुमन से. Hi, I am Sadaf.
And I'm Arshit. खाने का इतिहास, economics, policy, psychology, सब है मेन्यू पे.
Only on the Nankali podcast every Wednesday. सिर्फ IVM podcast ऐप या वेबसाइट पर या फिर जहां से भी आप अपने पॉडकास्ट सुनते हो.